performance review gave me my first proper laugh out loud with The Office. And when I started watching this, I didn't think I'd ever get to this stage. So I am kind of really happy with this. This is the 8th episode of the 2nd season of The Office. This is directed by the wonderful Paul Feig. And as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about some key aspects of the episode and share some thoughts. And the laugh out loud came in the opening scene. I watched it twice. Absolutely fantastic. Where Dwight is sitting on a fitness orb. And my first thought was, that's incredibly annoying. If you're sitting trying to work next to somebody and they're bobbing around and trying to maintain their posture and balance, it's going to get irritating. And clearly Jim was irritated, and I didn't know where he was going. He asked Dwight how much it cost, and I genuinely thought, what's the relevance there? And Jim obviously acknowledges to himself that it's not a lot of money. It was $25. It was worth the price it was going to cost him to do what he did next. And he stood up and he took a pair of scissors and just swacked them into the ball, and we hear this tremendous pop, and Dwight just falls down to the ground, and it's just perfectly executed. So funny. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I said, that's the first proper laugh out loud that I've had with The Office, and I had a lot of fun. The episode is focused on everybody's performance reviews. Pam goes first, and Michael asks her to interpret the message that Jan left on his answer machine. It turns out, though, that she was just returning all of Michael's incessant calls, and she was going to go to the office later on that day because also he needed his performance review. Seems like a terrible idea to do everything on the same day, but nevertheless, this is what they're doing. And Jan comes into the office a little later, and we'll come back to that. Dwight also thinks it's Friday. It is only Thursday, but Jim goes above and beyond to continue making Dwight think that it's Friday. And there was one moment when I thought it was about to be spoiled, when Dwight mentioned it when everybody was gathered for a meeting, but nobody said anything. And, well, I guess I'll wrap up this part of the narrative here, so I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, not quite chronologically. This all comes together at the end of the episode when there's a phone ringing. Presumably this is Dwight's phone. Nobody's there to answer it. And Michael asks where Dwight is. It's 12:20. And then the next thing we see is Dwight rushing in from the car park, obviously having realised at some point, I assume maybe he set his alarm clock a little bit later the next morning and then woke up and realised actually it's Friday. And he was late for work for the first time, which must sting, but it was very funny. Funny for me as a viewer, but I would never want that to happen to me in real life. That would be utterly devastating if it did. Jan is then in the office, and we get to see a little bit of the older Michael. I feel like Michael became less irritating in the 2nd season. In fact, he definitely did. He became likeable. He's become quite likeable over the episodes. But season 1 Michael really irritated me. And for some reason, whenever he's talking about Jan or talking to Jan, he just kind of seems to return to his sleazier self. And I'm not a fan of it. In small doses, yes. But when it's pretty much his personality in the full episode, I'm not particularly a fan of that at all. We got a bit of respite from that, though, when they have the meeting and they're all talking about the suggestion box suggestions. I also feel like that's a bad idea, having a meeting with the entire company, or, well, the entire department, to discuss what's been put in the suggestions is a pretty bad idea, because at some point the suggestions are going to be ridiculous. And they are. They're all, well, some of them are all about Michael and his smells. And it's just making for a really awkward environment. Funny as a viewer, but in reality, I wouldn't want that to happen. And Michael very clearly hasn't looked at the suggestions box in a long time. This is just one of many things that Jan is seeing. And honestly, I dread to think what his performance review would actually be like. Jan doesn't get to conduct his full performance review because he's being creepy. He's being sleazy and a little bit needy, and it's not pleasant to watch, I'll be honest. And Jan gives him what for. She basically tells him all of that and makes it clear that he's being really inappropriate and that she'll have to just conduct his review over the phone. If your boss is too creeped out to be in the room with you, I don't know how he's still working at Dunder Mifflin, to be perfectly honest. So it's not great to be Michael at the moment. Really some great moments. I'm really hoping, though, they don't drag out this with Jan for too long. I feel like it would get very old very quickly. But within this episode, I quite liked it. And in general, it was a really good episode. Oh, and I really liked it when I didn't see this coming either. Michael used infer when he meant implied. And my thought was, you've just used infer when you meant implied. And then Creed pointed it out. And I'm so glad he did, because it really irritates me. And I really appreciated that and liked it. A nice way to educate viewers who perhaps don't know that there's a difference. I enjoyed this episode a lot. It got off to the strongest start. It's going to live in my head for a while. The strongest start of any Office episode so far for me. I had a lot of fun with this one. Hoping the Jan aspect of the story doesn't stretch out for too much longer, as I will get bored of it pretty quickly. But other than that, within this episode, it was okay. I liked it enough. I thought Performance Review was generally a pretty strong episode.